All right, let's get our Facebook folks in here. Then we'll be officially on the road here on Monday morning. Spinning wheel 1 and 2. All right, welcome in, welcome in. It is Monday morning, the 15th of April, and it's time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendell, and joined by, on these morning shows, Scott Kennedy. Scott, how are you doing? Are you ready for hour 2 today?
Happy tax day, everybody.
Oh, man.
Yeah, ready to go. We've already we warmed up talking over on my channels, hit a lot of Mel Kiper and Field Yates' draft. We'll hit some of that today as well.
Yeah, a little bit of draft props, maybe run a mock draft Monday since we don't have many more of those left. And a lot of fun. Yeah, 1 week away from the new jerseys as well. But let's say hello to everybody in the chat as we get the ball rolling. And if you guys have any comments, questions for us, make sure you hit us up in the chat. But of course, like, subscribe underneath. And the number one thing you can do to help us out is super chat and superstars to help keep these morning shows going. Because now I'm live at 5:30, which means I'm waking up at 4:45 a.m. To come hang out with you guys on these shows. And a quick announcement off the top. We mentioned it last week, but we're doing it again here. We're moving Thursday to Wednesday. So instead of Monday and Thursday or Tuesday, Thursday or whatever, nope. Broncos for Breakfast, 7:30 Mountain Time on Mondays and Wednesdays. We'll be doing Falcons and then Broncos back to back. So if you get there a little early or wondering why we're taking so long, probably a coffee break in between shows and getting ourselves going. So let's say a lot of people as we start to trickle in and talking about super chats. Just gave them the shout out over on the other show. Now we got him in here. Oblivion Empire dropping back-to-back super chats today, keeping the lights on and keeping the coffee hot. Says, hey, Broncos fans, let's have a greatest show and a week. Last week before the draft, hit them likes and show support these guys for what they do. Really do appreciate that, Oblivion Empire. Helps a heck of a lot, and just really, really nice of you to come in and support us on both shows, because that's not supporting the team. That's supporting us two on the show. So really, really kind of you to do that. Just so helpful. We also got Chris Hissel coming in here. Chris has been, I think, a relatively new name, but definitely has come on strong in the month of April. So good to see you, Chris. Hope you're doing well. He says, you guys have the power to move days. Can we skip winter next year? So, I mean, I think winter is needed, as well. I appreciate winter for what it is, but I live somewhere where it doesn't get freezing cold, so I can say that. Although it's really dark here. I think a lot of people complain about the weather in the Pacific Northwest, Scott, are probably Californians who aren't used to, the lack of sun. But when you go, 50 out of 55 days in cloud cover, it can get long. I get it.
Anything out of the 65 to 75 range and a Californian is upset. So there's not a lot of variance there because, frankly, that's what it is. I'll move it a little bit. 63 to 78. That's good. I'll never forget my first year, and one of my first years in California was playing soccer. I'm old. I'm not good for 11 on 11. I was still in my mid 30s. And we went down a man. So we're playing with 10. I said to my friend, I said, dude, I'm not in shape to play 11v11, let alone down a man. He goes, yeah. Plus it was like 80. Mm-hmm. And I just laughed. He's like, what? I'm like, I just think it's funny that you think 80 degrees is the reason why it was hard. So yes, Californians complain about the weather.
They have it nice. And Jeremy says Nick gives the impression we were really inconveniencing him. No, just you, Jeremy. No, it's anything that takes away personal time / sleep time when you have a newborn feels like a little bit like, oh, I could be sleeping right now. But no, we're happy to be here. No inconvenience, but the super chats really do help a heck of a lot. Keep the show going. And shout out to Michael Ronquillo for that as well. Says, good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos. Also, Chris as well says, I'm old and winter isn't fun anymore. Did you see PFF has us trading 3 to get Jaden Daniels? I would love it. I did not see that. I have not heard, other than the Broncos bringing in Daniels for the, at least I think they brought him in for one of their 30 player visits, but I have not heard almost any linkage between Daniels and the Broncos. But I mean, everything the Broncos have done this year, Scott, other than bringing back PJ Locke, has been not a lot of talk before it happened. I mean, I'll never forget. You came on. It's like, I switched your show update or your show name to about Justin Simmons. It's like, what do you mean switched it about Justin Simmons? Like, they released him. Like, BS. Pull it on. Oh my gosh. Are you serious? So things have been pretty shocking as they've happened this season. So Broncos trading up to 3 to get Daniels.
Projected trade. projected trade. I'll drop this in the chat. If we're gonna aggregate some content, I want to make sure we're gonna give them some love. PF says projected trade. Broncos received the number 3 pick. Patriots received 12, 76, and a 2025 first round pick. I think that would be a steal for the Broncos, and I don't think it gets it done.
I think the Raiders would beat that. The team that has a lot of, besides the Washington Commies, the team that has a lot of flirtations with Jaden Daniels is the Raiders. You guys would probably recall that Antonio Pierce actually was on the staff at Arizona State that helped recruit him and bring him in. So there's already a connection there. And there's been a lot of flirtation and talk about if Daniels does fall past pick 2, Raiders are going to be aggressive in trying to go up and get him.
And the whole talk right now is Minnesota Vikings 11, 23, and a 2025 number 1. 3 first-round picks, which is what it's going to cost you. It's not going to cost you 2 first-rounders and a third.
To get up to 3.
Yes, Chris, if you can get this deal, you jump all over it. Abso-freaking-lutely. I don't think you can. I really don't.
Yep. Absolutely. We got David Youngkin coming in here. Says, morning, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great morning. Rumors are the Eagles are interested in PS2. I bet you the entirety of the whole NFL is interested in PS2. Why wouldn't you be? He's a heck of a cornerback. He's very much in his prime. He's not dealt with any injuries, and he's still relatively cheap. You have 2 years of contractual control, plus what is he entering? Year 4 right now? So 2 years of contractual control, and then the tag. I mean, really, you have 3 years left where he's not going to be cheap on the tag, but, you don't have to pay him the highest defensive back contract in NFL history, which is what it's going to be when he gets paid, Scott. When the time, it's just inflation of the cap. But like when it's time for Surtain to get paid, he's not going to get paid like the defensive tackles he might get paid like the defensive tackles, but not the top pass rushers, but the highest non-pass rushing defensive contract in NFL history coming his way.
He's going to get a $100 million contract.
Yep.
Yeah, he'll guaranteed probably. I mean, it'd probably be like 6 years with 4 guaranteed at $100 million. Just let me clarify on the weather here. We got some Californians checking in. I was out there for 9 years, and when I mean California and the weather, I specifically meant Southern Californians. Gets a little bit warmer down there, but yeah, it was crazy. It was basically 1 degree warmer every mile you went from the beach. Every mile, just 1 degree. So if it was 80 where I was right down Marina Del Rey, it was 110 inland. Yeah, I get it. And every once in a while, the weather would blow the opposite direction. Instead of from the water, it would blow from the desert.
Onshore versus offshore.
Yeah, and that got really hot. And a lot of the old places in Southern California don't have air conditioning, which blows my mind. We did. And that was rough. I'd check into a hotel for 3 days, man, if I had 100-degree weather and no AC.
Yeah, I don't know. It's that being from the Midwest and having seen the extremes. This is light work. I can still get outside without I remember being in Iowa City for grad school, and we had a polar vortex, and there was a honor student who no alcohol or anything in his system, but it was so cold he slipped and fell, and he passed away because it was so cold, and nobody's finding him totally healthy, sober, and just out in the elements. So it's not like that out here or anything. I mean, it's crazy. Those Midwest people, man, God bless you guys. Seeing the 110 plus versus the negative 50s in the winter. It's a different breed. It's no wonder you look at the alcohol consumption by county in the Midwest. It's like, oh my God, Wisconsin, what's going on there? Hope you're doing okay. Michael Ronquillo says New England Patriots had dinner with JJ McCarthy. Patriots are doing their due diligence. I wouldn't be shocked at all, Scott, if McCarthy ends up being the 3rd quarterback taken. I could see him jumping Daniels or May in the end. He's very much in the conversation. I'm glad I've been here since, I guess, mid-January now, where I honestly, there was a tweet. I remember exactly where I was, and I sent it. It had a lot of engagement, which was like Broncos fans talking about May and Daniels. Get to know JJ McCarthy. And the comments were, Nick, you freaking idiot. Have you seen JJ McCarthy play? I'm like, NFL's going to like him. They're going to like him. And here we are 3 months later, and they more than like him. They seem to love him.
I got on the JJ McCarthy train when I got back, because I don't really start my draft stuff until Senior Bowl, until I got back from Senior Bowl. And I watched Michael Penix. I watched Spencer Rattler. I watched Bo Nix. I came back and watched a little bit of JJ McCarthy, and it didn't take me long. I'm like, all right, I like this guy better than these guys I just watched for 3 days. He's more talented. And the NFL seems to agree. But we'll see. Again, we don't know for sure. we don't know for sure until what happens. Nobody's stock is up or down until it actually is up or down.
Yep.
And then some of that stuff is just BS. Did Will Levis fall, or is that where the NFL had him all along?
Won't know until we know, right? Also, the thing is, it only takes one team. It's like the Broncos. Let's
Tim
say
Tebow.
Tim Tebow's the example. One more recently was like nobody in the league actually had a first round grade on Dwayne Haskins. Rest in peace, Dwayne Haskins. But the Commanders, Snyder, wanted him, so they ended up taking him, even though they did not view him as a first round pick. Most of the league. Another one, forced pick, I think of EJ Manuel. A lot of people had day 2 grades on him. He ends up going 22nd overall in that draft. So it's all it takes is one team. Doesn't mean they're going to be necessarily wrong. But the example right now is you hear a lot of people talking about Bo Nix, the Broncos, and they're not going to have competition for him at 12. Well, maybe they're out evaluating everybody, and Nix ends up being the player that's worth 12 overall. We don't know until we know, or maybe they won't take him there. But it's always those kind of conversations when it comes to the quarterback boards. Teams are going to evaluate these guys completely differently.
My thought on Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos is it says to me more about Sean Payton than it does about Bo Nix. Everybody, it's always when you talk about Bo Nix at 12 to the Broncos, it's always with the qualifier that it's because he fits what Sean Payton does. Not because he's worth the 12 overall pick, but because he couldn't be good in Sean Payton's system. Okay, well, can somebody else be good? And is there a chance I can get him later, or am I going to overdraft him? If you think he's a guy, then you take him at 12. No questions asked. But it should bother you a little bit that he's really not being linked to any other team in the first round. For the most part, he's a 30 to 40 at best prospect on just about every board. Now, that doesn't mean the NFL board. Again, this is qualifiers in all of this, because again, I'm not going to tell you I'm right on this, but it's always with the qualifier that he fits what Sean Payton does. That Bo Nix is being linked to the Broncos at 12 speaks more about Sean Payton than it does about Bo Nix. And that's not where I want my number 12 pick, Nick. I want my number 12 pick to be a scheme independent, regardless of who's picking him. I want him to be a guy.
Yeah. But again, I mean, it could be where Bo Nix ends up being the best quarterback in this draft class because the situation, the fit, you never know, right? It's volatile. But you do worry about the process versus the results in that kind of situation. But heck, I mean, as Sean Payton said ever so humbly in the combine presser, a lot of people are not good at evaluating the quarterbacks, and that's one advantage we have because we are good. To slightly misquote him, but that was the general takeaway from Sean. Always lacking in confidence, that Sean Payton. Gary Palmer, not lacking, helping us out here today, says, good morning, Nick and Scott, just supporting the best. We appreciate you so much, Gary. Hope you're doing well. Always, I mean, talk about an OG. Gary is always in here supporting us, Scott, so always love to give Gary some love. Zach comes in and says, who's a player way too low or way too high in mock drafts where you think they'll be drafted? I think that maybe I'm a little bit biased here, Scott, but I think Cooper DeJean, he's like almost, I see a lot of mock drafts where he's falling, almost out of the first round in that like 30 range. I think he's really much in the conversation starting at about pick 15 or further down with his tackling proficiency, his versatility on the back end with what they're doing with the hip drop tackle, with his ball skills and return skills on top of what they've done now with the kickoff rules. I mean, it's going to be almost impossible for him not to be an impact player on your team. It just, no matter where he plays on the field. Now, if he's purely a safety and teams view him that way, I could see him drop given what we saw happen with safeties this season, but I think it's not fair to completely put him in that box. So he's one who stands out for me, who I think's been a little bit too low. The one also, and maybe this is just my own personal bias and stance here, Scott, I feel like we haven't talked about him very much at all, but I wouldn't be shocked if he's the second offensive lineman off the board. And that's JC Latham from Alabama. I mean, just the power package that he plays, the fact that if he doesn't work at tackle, he's going to be a good guard. And what we're seeing across the league right now with the run blocking on duo, especially, I mean, there's been kind of a change recently in the NFL, Scott, where the offensive line, a lot of these teams, if you're going to get lighter in the box, we're going to get bigger on the offensive line. And no teams that embodied that as much as the Rams. You think outside zone, you think small, light, quick feet. You think about those Broncos teams when they had Terrell Davis. Rams outside zone team, but they're running more duo, more versatile in their scheme. And their offensive line across the board is freaking massive, Scott. They're moving Steve Avila to center. He's like 320 pounds. They have like 340-pound guards in there now. They're huge. So it's go ahead.
I'm telling it's cyclical. Power football will come back. You get bigger, okay, we'll get faster. You get small, defense gets small, okay? Your defenses are small now, we'll go big again. It just goes round and round and round. It gets cyclical on this. Zach, my draft day, my 75 to 150 coming out of the Senior Bowl crush in the past was Spencer Brown. The next year was Abraham Lucas. And this year it's another offensive tackle. It's Roger Rosengarten, was out of Washington. And as early as last month, you could find him 75 to 150 range. He's jumping up into I've seen him mocked in the first now. Offensive tackle Roger Rosengarten, University of Washington. That's where will he end up? That was the guy I've kind of planted my flag on as being my guy this year was Rosengarten. So we'll see where he ends up.
Yeah. Will be interesting. We got Chris coming in here. Coach Chris, thank you so much coming in at the Star Super Chat. Says this offseason is killing me. Well, hopefully we're a little bit of an antidote to the killing you there, or killing you slower. So much to talk about draft day trades. If we're to happen, which Broncos players are untouchable, which are draft day casualties. Have a great day. It's a great start to the week. Players who maybe become a little bit more movable post-draft. I'm watching to see what the Broncos do with wide receiver and offensive tackle, because we're still very much on Cortland Sutton and Garrett Bowles watch, in my opinion. If you take a wide receiver first round or an offensive tackle first round, I could easily see the team turning around and moving one of those guys, flipping the contract. Especially, there's going to be teams that want wide receiver / offensive tackle in the top 100 picks. The board just doesn't work out that way. So then maybe you talk about a Garrett Bowles or Cortland Sutton flip. Odds are I think it's more likely they're still Broncos in the end, but I think that's a viable conversation. Dark horse guys here for me are the two, I guess, Scott, this is bad sounding, but the two starting edges. Not great to be starting edges, but two starting edges you have in Barry Browning and Jonathan Cooper. We saw the Broncos do it when they had Malik Reed. They traded him before the season. They did a day 3 pick swap and move Reed to the Steelers. I could see it where the Broncos use a premium pick on an edge rusher and then flip one of Cooper or Browning, because they're both going to be on the last year of their contract. You're probably not going to pay both to keep them. Maybe you're just looking to reset the room there, get another draft pick, and free open a pathway to the field for somebody you're bringing in by moving one of Cooper or Browning.
Chris, I'm going to make it real simple on this, on which guys are untouchable. It's not going to have anything to do with the player. It's going to have to do with the contracts. When it comes to players, no one is untouchable. Maybe Quinn Miners. That's about it. And maybe not, because he's going to be getting he's going to be coming off a contract soon. Otherwise, it's about cap versus dead cap, or the guys who were just signed. You're not going to turn around and trade safety, your new safety, Brandon Jones. But Mike McGlinchey has a $7 million cap hit against $47 million dead cap. He's untouchable. Zach Allen, 7.7 cap hit against $27 million dead cap. Untouchable. Ben Powers with his new deal, $6.5 million cap hit, 21.8. Untouchable. After that, they're all up for grabs.
Yep.
The right cost, the right deal, everybody's available. Those three are not.
As they should be, with where the Broncos are at right now. And leading into that, Keith also comes in and says, great morning. Give me your opinion. How prepared should Broncos country be to see PS2 traded? If Sean Payton absolutely loves a guy, I think it is possible. I know that some, Ben Albright especially, have been pushing back that that's never going to happen. But I feel like with Sean Payton, I wouldn't completely close that box. Let's say he's absolutely head over heels in love with Drake May, and the only way he can get up to 3 is move PS2 to go up and get him. I think it's possible. Now, likely? No, not likely at all. But possible. I don't like to speak in absolutes, especially when we're trying to predict the future, Scott. So not probable, unlikely, but could happen.
Keith followed up with some stars. He says, we lost our starting quarterback, starting center, starting middle linebacker, and safety. That's the spine of your teams on offense and defense right there. I think it will be hard to find replacements in the draft, especially at inside linebacker, middle linebacker, and center. Can you give me some names? Love y'all. Appreciate you, Keith. Love you too. I think, again, they seem pretty confident in Alex Forsythe going into the draft, going into this offseason. But I really like some of the centers in this draft, Nick, and just going down, and if Forsyth was a 7th round pick or somewhere along those lines, and it looks like Tanner Bortolini has moved up to 153 on the NFL mock draft database. That seems a lot closer for me. Bo Limmer at 122, day 3 picks. I think you can get some value at center. At inside linebacker, I think you can get value with veterans. People don't really want to sign those guys a second contract, so good veterans might be cheaper than draft picks, day 2 draft picks on their 4th year. They end up getting $4 or $5 million. I can get a veteran with 100+ tackles for cheaper than that, Nick, at inside linebacker.
Yeah, linebacker is one of those
I think may have gotten taken care of already.
Yeah, linebacker is one of those ones where you can find serviceable players for sure, especially different scheme to scheme that can rack up tackles. But if you have a true difference maker, they're going to get paid. It's kind of, I feel like they're very similar to tight end, where like there's just so many basic generic guys who can come in and do a job, but not like difference makers. And also because of that, you don't really want to use premium picks on them. Furthermore, and with where the game is going too, it's one of the more heady positions. I'm curious to see what happens, Scott. Bringing it back to our conversation earlier, this is the smallest off-ball linebacker measurement class we've ever had. They've been really trending down. Are we going to start to see a little bit more of a premium placed on the guys who can actually keep the weight on while still being athletic out there? Because, your 215 to 230 pound linebackers is, somewhat concerning if you're going up against 340 pound offensive tackles and heavy sets. So I'll be curious to see what the trends are there. As far as center goes, it's a good center class. Just some off the names off the top of the head. There's the big 3, in my opinion. I expect all 3 to come off the board in the top 50 in Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon, Graham Barton, who seems to be center number 1, offensive line number 1 from Duke, and then Zach Frazier, who I really like a lot as well. Just a really fun, aggressive player. There's some day 2 options as well. You mentioned Tanner Bortolini from Wisconsin, Cedric Van Pran, who's had a lot of snaps at Georgia, Bo Limmer at Arkansas. Somebody we talked about, I think we mocked him to the Falcons here recently, Scott, Hunter Norzad, the Penn State center. And then I also really like Matt Lee from Miami. He's another one who could be a developmental player for the Broncos. We already talked about, you have Luke Wattenberg here. You got Alex Forsyth, but they also paid Sam Mustipher pretty cheap to come in, who's got a lot of snaps as well to raise the floor of the room. So Broncos could draft a center still. Going to be a lot of competition. You're hoping that your offensive line coach, Zach Streif, can identify somebody and get the best guy in there. And there's a few other names that could fit in the center conversation as well. Troy Fontenot could end up playing center year 1. He's got 5 position versatility. So there's options.
And Nick, do you get the feeling the Broncos don't feel that center, safety, and inside linebacker are priorities for this team? Do you think they feel pretty good about the room? Again, watch what they do, not what they say, but what they're saying. And they haven't had a lot of money to spend in free agency, so we'll see what the draft says to us. But they're talking a lot like they don't feel like center and linebacker and safety is really a priority anymore. They took care of safety. It was a priority. They spent some good money on getting a safety. They've been talking up Forsyth a lot. It'd be strange to go in and spend a 3rd, 4th round pick on a center if you've been talking up Forsyth like that. And then, you re-sign again. There is absolutely no risk in re-signing Jonas Griffith on there. But, Singleton's there. Then you've got, let's see. Drew Sanders is you're hoping, and who knows what they do with them. Inside linebacker, you need another inside linebacker.
You signed Cody Barton. He's probably going to be a starter out there.
Well, then it's taken care of. They feel like that's good then.
And again, it's fool me 5 times, blame me. Classic quote Nick Kendell on that one. But Jonas Griffith still seems like somebody that they like in the building there. Maybe it's going to be a split where Griffith's your base package inside linebacker and you move to Cody Barton then on sub packages. But I think the big thing here for safety, linebacker, and center, Scott, is A, those aren't really first round positions overall. And B, they also feel very much cherry on top when you're building a team. You need to have that like base of the premium positions filled out with young contract players or blue chippers before you start to look at those secondary and tertiary positions, which I would consider linebacker, safety, and center. So the reason we're not hearing those positions is because the Broncos have needs at edge rusher, at defensive tackle, at cornerback, at wide receiver, at offensive tackle, at quarterback, of course. Those are the ones historically you want to use first-round picks on them for the most part. And Denver has long-term questions at them. They have not spent premium resources on those picks recently because they have not had premium resources to spend on those positions in the draft. Haven't had a top 50 pick since Javonte Williams. This will be 3 drafts ago now. So, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest reason you're not seeing those positions, as well as it not being a fantastic, specifically safety and linebacker draft in the top.
Yeah, so I wouldn't expect, again, I'm with Nick on this. I wouldn't expect there to be much more of an investment in those positions.
Yeah. Just probably not how it plays out. Moving on here, I did want to talk a little bit about some of the draft odds here, Scott, while we're getting into it. Some of the interesting ones. So shout out to Jamie Eisner. I looked for the player-by-player over-unders, and unfortunately I could not find a list of every single player in the class. But there are some interesting betting props here, Scott, for the players over-unders and just Broncos betting odds specifically, as we're about 1.5 weeks now from the NFL draft. So shout out to Jamie Eisner again. So here's some over-unders for you, Scott. Tell me if any of these really stand out for you as interesting. We got J.J. McCarthy this is via DraftKings. Thank you, DraftKings. J.J. McCarthy's over-under, 5.5. Joe Alt's, 7.5. Rome Odunze, 8.5.
I was going to say, they've got to be, Alt and Odunze have to be right there.
And
that's, again, we've talked about that 8 spot as a pivot in this draft.
Without a doubt. I mean, heck, 6 might be a pivot in the draft too. What are the Giants going to do? If they could take a quarterback easily or move up for a quarterback. Honestly, if I was the Patriots or the Cardinals, that's what I'd be praying for. I can still get one of those premium wide receivers, but get, future draft capital. Keeping it going. Brian Thomas, 15.5, the other wide receiver. He's a dark horse to go pretty early. Byron Murphy at 16.5, and then Bo Nix at 32.5. So just out of the first round there, Scott. Interesting to see Bo Nix at 32.5, but then to turn around and see the Broncos specifically. The odds for the Broncos draft pick right now, Bo Nix is the heavy favorite for the Broncos at, I believe it's -125. Nobody else even comes close for Bo Nix's betting odds. So we'll see what happens. But 32.5 versus how high it is on the Broncos. I'm curious how those two line up with each other.
A Drew Lock type of scenario works so well. And I don't mean the player. I just mean as far as the draft goes. If memory serves me, and from what I've listened to y'all covering at the time, Drew Lock's first round, Drew Lock's first round, Drew Lock's first round. Well, they didn't take him in the first round, but they still got him. That would work so well this year. The problem is you're going to have to make a trade. If you trade down a little bit, again, the second round pick that you don't have this year is just killing me. When I start thinking about the options that the Broncos have, you need a second round pick. Trade down some. We can get into the Kyper Yates mock draft as well. I think was pretty interesting, and what the Denver Broncos did, because they did come out of it with a quarterback.
I did just want to give. I found the data here specifically for Bo Nix. It's really crazy how high, and some of this might be dictated by the market. Right? Because it's not always what's going to happen, but how Vegas can maximize earnings on bets. But Bo Nix is so heavily favored to go to the Broncos. So still the over-under is 32.5. But team to draft Bo Nix, Denver at -120 now. This is via FanDuel. The next highest odds, Scott, are the Raiders at +700 and the Giants at +700. Then the Vikings at +950. So just crazy far and away. I would not touch that. I feel like that's so in favor of Denver that it doesn't make sense to touch that, given what we know about probabilities and how the draft plays out. Yeah. But far and away, Denver is the number one fit for Nix according to Vegas.
Well, you could hedge on that if someone that's really good in math, or if we figured it out, you could probably hedge on that, because if Denver gets Bo Nix, he's going before 32.5.
Probably. I mean, unless they trade down.
If they don't take him at 12, he could fall into the 40s.
Yeah.
So you could probably take, okay, I'm going to put this much on him. The Broncos getting him, and I'm going to take the over that he goes after 32.5 and play both sides and win somehow. Somebody could probably figure that out.
Definitely interesting. And just back before we get into Kiper and oh gosh, names escaping me now. Field Yates. Is it Field Yates' mock draft? FanDuel also has Broncos positionals odds for their first pick, first drafted player. Right now, far and away. Scott, we love this. Your favorite thing. I have a data that you don't know, so I put you on the spot. The number one most likely position. I'm not going to ask you what the numbers are, just the list of order. Number one most likely position for the Broncos to draft according to Vegas is
quarterback.
Easy. Yep. Like nice softball here. That's good. Number two. This is also, I would think, a softball here, and they even clump two positions together to make it even easier.
DL.
Defensive line.
Yeah, if they clumped them together, I was going to say, offensive tackle maybe, but if they're putting them two together, it's not OL, it's DL.
Yep. So quarterback is negative 105, so pretty good odds there that it would be a quarterback. But defensive line plus 250, not far off. The third most likely, according to FanDuel, is
wide receiver. I'd go DB. It's going to be DB. Yeah, somewhere in the DB. Again, you need another corner. You absolutely need another corner.
Cornerback. We'll see what the Broncos do. They bring in Levi Wallace. I don't believe they've signed him yet, but we'll see. They're still looking for cornerback there. Cornerback is at plus 430. And then the next two, Scott, the next two of them are plus 1,000 for offensive line, plus 1,300 for wide receiver, and then also plus 1,300 for tight end. So that's your Brock Bowers bet there at pick 13 or at pick 12 for the Broncos, that bringing up that odds as well. Right now, I think the value pick, if you are betting on the Broncos line there for their first player, I think it'd have to be defensive line, that plus 250, considering it's the odds of the number of players that could be a viable solution there, right? You probably have 4 or 5 guys that make sense there for Denver out of the top, interior defensive linemen and edge rushers versus just 2 cornerbacks and maybe 2 quarterbacks as well. So I think the value pick there, probably the defensive line, given the Broncos' needs and where they're drafting and just the number of guys that make sense in that range.
Yeah, again, the over-under on that, it's really strange, and the Broncos might make a trade, but it might be to trade up, to get back into – you're not getting my 2025 first unless it's to move up into the top 5. But if I need to get into the late 20s after I use 12, then maybe I'll send you my 2025 first to get into the late 20s to take a quarterback I like.
I would be very skeptical of doing that if I were the Broncos, given what, again, talking a
lot
of
I think I just contradicted the hell out of myself while I was watching you drink coffee.
It's okay.
The only way you're getting my 2025 first is if I get into the top 5.
Yeah.
If I want to get back into the back end of the first round, you're not getting my 2025 first, but a second and this year's third would be up for grabs, something along those lines.
Yeah. And I love Jeremy coming in here. Love Jeremy in general. But this kind of gives Scott's vibes here. Talking about betting. He hedges it for his own happiness. If I bet, I'd go against my wants to be happy.
How much money am I willing to lose to be happy?
Yep. That's
I should have
the
put
Braves, right?
$1,000 on 28-3. That killed my fandom. That was the end of me right there. 2016. I'm done.
Man, it's hopefully we'll Braves looking pretty good again this year. We'll see. Everybody hates
Strider just did another arm, so yeah. When I bet, weird things happen. I'm good at choosing it until my own money goes in. A friend of mine, may he rest in peace, I won him like 10 consecutive bets on 10 consecutive weeks. He says, "Okay, I got a freebie, $200. You want to use it?" I'm like, "Okay." He got Sky Miles points from his bookie.
Wow.
I'm like, "Okay, yeah." I see Virginia against Duke. And all that has to happen was like a 1-point game. If Virginia wins, they win. Then I win. Duke converts a 4th and 17 from their own 20 with 30 seconds left in the game and goes and kicks the game-winning field goal, and I lose. I'm like, that's the kind of stuff that happens when my money is on the table. I want him seriously, like 10 consecutive games.
Damn. I mean, so guys, we're here for betting advice from Scott. Just don't do what he puts his money in. We'll be good, or go against that. Dave Glassman in the house. Good to see you. Mike Evans says Vikings trying to trade back now. Vikings, I mean, we've heard every single thing for the Vikings at this point. They want this quarterback. They don't want this quarterback. They have 2 first round. Oh, they want to do everything they can to keep pick 23. Lord freaking knows what the Vikings are going to do. My read on this is the Vikings are probably pushing really hard for the league to see if we can get tampering charges in place for the Kirk Cousins stuff, which then could flip their pick 11 to 8 possibly Mike Florio's been putting out there. We talked about it on the Falcons show this morning. We'll see if that comes to fruition. The other one is I think they probably only like 1 or 2 of the top quarterbacks or 3 of the top quarterbacks, and they can't get up to 3 right now. Otherwise, they probably would have done it. But they can get up to 4. But if you only like 3 of the top 4 and you trade to 4, you don't have a guarantee that that guy's going to be there. So probably something in place structure-wise with the Cardinals, dependent on how the board falls. That is my read of the Vikings trade-up situation right now.
Tim Durr says, so use someone else's money to gamble. Got it. Yeah. How do you think CEOs get to where they are? I've worked for a guy for 15 years that was very, very good at this.
Don't love
Shout
that.
out to Jimmy Hectic.
We got Colt Rambler coming in, says, morning, y'all. Good to see you, Colt. Sean Burns in the house. We got Aaron Johnson. Hey, Scott, your Falcons showing. Oh, yeah, you forgot to flip the mailbox. That's okay. String guy coming in here. Iowa is very cold. Yes, it is. Greg Smith in the house. Holy Diver comes in. Yep. Thanks. Shout out to Albert Knoppers, of course. Holy Diver says Scott's a new hairstyle. No, Scott's just got some product in there this morning.
It's been about 2 weeks since I got a haircut. So
yeah,
you never have to guess when I get a haircut. I'll let it go for about 3 months, 4 months till I can't stand it anymore. And then
my hair grows.
This is about where I actually like it. I'm just too lazy to go get it cut every 6 weeks or so.
I get the Chia Pet. My hair is way too thick that if I don't get it cut every 4 to 6 weeks, it grows out sideways.
I'm just glad to still have it at my age.
I had a crazy. Did you ever have long hair?
The giant forehead. I've always had the giant forehead, y'all. So,
did you ever have long hair?
I did. Right when I quit drinking, I kind of grew it out for, let's see, 97. I grew it out till I got married. It's almost 3 years. Not counting the mullets in the 80s. Yes, I was a soccer player in the 80s. Had a mullet. I didn't cut it from 97 until the week I got married at the end of 2000. So it got all one length. It was pretty long. But I was like, I'm not getting wedding pictures like this for God's sake. So I got it cut that week.
I had the big Jackie Moon white guy kind of fro going on. Really, Jay Roper's in the house. Curly hair gang. I get really wavy curly, and I'd wear like the headband underneath it, so it was like a mushroom cloud. It was not a good look, but it certainly was a look. Pearl Heater coming in here saying good morning, all running late this AM. That's okay. We're hanging out. We're having fun. Hope you're doing well. Aaron P with the 12th pick in the 2024 NFL draft. The Denver Broncos select. We have a trade announced here. The Broncos are trading back from 12 overall. I think that is, man, Scott, if you had to rank them right now, 1, 2, 3 from most likely to least likely, trade up, trade down, stay put.
Stay put.
You think
easiest thing to do.
I think right now it's trade back. Maybe that's me wish casting a little bit
Payton's
there.
Not trading back. He's way too aggressive and impatient.
Yeah. Peyton's still here. George Payton.
Sean Payton is not. I'm saying that again. I said it as a fact. It's not a fact.
Yeah.
It's my opinion that he is not going to trade back.
Mm-hmm.
It is my opinion that at worst he stays put. And how he could end up giving picks away again to move back up into the second round.
Yeah, that's the one wild card factor here, Scott, is, and maybe it's, I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it yet, but the ownership influence. You don't want the owners who are overly involved, but it sounds like they're becoming increasingly more interested and involved in the conversations in regards to the football personnel decisions. So
hopefully they've been listening to our show and saying that having your coach be your general manager is a bad idea. It's a conflict of interest.
Doesn't tend to work, right? Long-term interests versus immediate interests. But the Penners swing, not even a swing vote. The Penner vote is the final vote, right?
And yeah, they're in charge. They're in charge.
So I think that maybe changes things a little bit. I think Sean Payton, what we've had in a Saints history in the first round, they've traded up 6 times and never traded back. But is that Loomis? Is that the ownership of the Saints being involved as much as Sean Payton? I mean, we'll see. It's a new draft. We have the Broncos trading up twice last season, so that's the data we have to go off of. But different kind of draft this year. So right now, I think the number one odds would be trade back versus then would be sitting at 12, and then it'd be trading up. But we'll see. Pearl Heater says,
2 second rounders. That'd be a nice one. We talk about not having 2. It'd be really nice to be able to get. I don't know. That's a long way to come out of there, though.
Yeah,
2 seconds and something else for my 12. wouldn't be a bad way to go. But if I can get into the teens, and the 30s, I'd be pretty happy.
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, one thing we did see last year, Scott, is they definitely moved around. That is a positive there as well. But we've got to wrap it on up here pretty soon. We have the Mel Kiper, Field Yates rotating mock draft. And Scott, I know that you have the ESPN subscription, so I'll give you the floor here. Broncos, I don't think there's any trades being mocked in this one. So where are the Broncos going with, according to Yates and Kiper?
Well, there were, but not for the Broncos, but someone that they're interested in. It was they alternated picks. Field Yates had the evens, and he took Brock Bowers, tight end, Georgia, to take a quarterback or not. That's the dilemma I'm sure Denver is weighing heavily. Ultimately, it felt a little too soon for me. And Bowers is a special prospect. He would instantly upgrade the entire passing game, no matter who is throwing the ball.
He would be a very fun piece and something totally different than what the Broncos have right now. Well, maybe not totally different. He is a better version, of course, of Greg Dulcich. In theory, if Dulcich was healthy and everything, then, you know, the smaller move tight end piece who's like, is he more fullback? Is he more slot? Is he more tight end? That's the question.
Playing?
That's yes. That the availability is your best ability. And we have not seen much of Dulcich. So they were not going into the season. They should not go into him depending on anything from him. It's just, you know, if you get anything, it's bonus. But Bo Nix, I know that somebody reported the Broncos had people on the ground for his workout. I'm still of the opinion, Scott, that taking a tight end that early with as many missing pieces as we have in the evaluation of Brock Bowers would not be my favorite usage of resources. I know that it's been a talking point for Eric Eager and Mina Kimes. It was Brock Bowers week, the end of last week, talking about the value there. He's not historically small for the position, but, you know, he's like in your 0th to 5th to 10th percentile in height and size. And now we don't have testing numbers from him, Scott. So historically, we have the data. There's no position, crazy enough, there's no position as correlated with the athleticism and hitting in the NFL as the tight end position. I think some of that is because college teams are really bad at developing tight ends and using them. It's a totally different game for tight ends, college to the NFL. But missing those evaluation marks for Bowers makes me very skeptical of using a premium pick on him, despite what the tape says, given what we know about tight ends historically in the draft.
Yeah, again, I get it. Again, you need a consistent type of player over the middle. He makes a lot of sense. I mean, he's really, really, really good. You can make an argument for him being best player in the draft. You can. There's an argument to be made there. Value, again, does it make sense? Can I get a tight end who's 75% as good in the 3rd round? Maybe I can. Something to think about there. Troy Boer, something we're thinking about you. You're thinking about us. He says, just supporting. Thanks, guys. Thank you. We certainly appreciate the support, Troy. And Jeremy has some input here. He says, if the Vikings don't their guy at 11 or higher, then you can't trade back beyond 22 if you still want Nix. The Vikings have 11 and 23, presumably because they want to trade up and get one of the top 4 quarterbacks. And in this mock draft, they do. Kyper says he has projected trades, and because I have all the odd number picks, I don't even have to ask Field Yates about them. The Vikings get number 5 after Marvin Harrison Jr. goes off the board. At number 4, they send number 11, number 23, and a 2025 first-round pick to get to number 5 to take J.J. McCarthy. So they do get their quarterback there. And it costs, again, at the top of the show, we talked about the first, what was it? PFF said a first, 2025 first, and a 3rd to get up to number 3. No. Take it. Yes, please. Mm-hmm. That's not going to be enough to get it done. This makes more sense. 2 firsts and a 2025 first, 3 overall firsts to move up for their first round pick at 5, not even at number 3. You're not getting a 3 with 2 firsts and a 3rd.
No.
So the quarterback is off the board. And Nick, what becomes then interesting, there is another trade involved at number 38. The New York Giants make a trade with the Titans at number 38 and select Bo Nix. They send the Titans the Titans send 38 and 146. And the Titans get back 47 and 70. So a little bit of a pick swap there. And the Giants then take Bo Nix at number 38. Number 12, number 38. Again, if it's not the Denver Broncos taking Bo Nix at 12, he's rarely in the first round.
I think part of that is because you don't see that many trades being projected in the back end. And a lot of those teams that are picking in the 20s have their quarterback because they made the playoffs, right? So we talked about the odds earlier for Nix. After Broncos, it's Giants, Vikings, and Raiders. Of course, it's all the teams that are looking for quarterbacks there. But wouldn't be shocked at all. Again, I agree with you, Scott. It does come off a reading like Drew Lock, where you see him being mocked of Denver at 10, but it's like, really, with him, this might be a little early for him, but there's a lot of linkage here. So I could see Denver moving around the board and still ending up with Nix if they like him.
I like Nix considerably better than Lock at the same point. And getting him in the second, I think, would be really good value. Getting him at 12, again, when we're talking about, whenever we talk about Nix at 12, it's because of Sean Payton. Well, then I don't need Nix at 12 if I've got Sean Payton. I can get somebody else that's similar. Excuse me. And Coach Chris comes in with a super chat. Thank you for the support, my friend. He says, could Green Bay give away the farm for Garrett Bowles? No. I read there's some smoke and it could clear up a lot of cash. What's your take? Love starting my week. Listen to you both. We'll certainly appreciate it. I think you could get one of the, I don't think you're going to get the farm anyway. I don't think you're going to get a huge return of draft picks or high draft picks regardless. But I think it would be one of the other if you were to get a high pick. I don't think you get all $18 million, $20 million of his salary and a higher round pick. Maybe you get a second, maybe you get a third if you eat some of the cash because he's going to get another deal. If he's traded, he's going to get an extension.
Yeah. Far as like Coach Chris' comment here about Green Bay with Bulls, that does make some sense. Green Bay has a lot of draft picks. The one thing I will disagree with is giving away the farm for Bulls. Nobody's giving away the farm for Bulls, but maybe you can get a future top 100 pick for him and get the cash off your books as well. Very dependent on how the board falls for the Broncos, though. But I would not be, I mean, the fact that they have not touched his contract or Cortland Sutton's contract, leave those open. I know there was like a $2 million guarantee that kicked in for Sutton, but $2 million, I mean, considering how much dead cap the Broncos have already eaten, what's another $2 million if the deal is right there? So could happen, but I don't expect the farm given up for any player on this Broncos team besides Surtain.
Yeah, I think if you could buy yourself a better pick, I think it's like maybe a fourth you'd get for him. And then maybe if depending on negotiate the cash involved, I could get it into a third, but possibility in there. I would rather, and Nick, I don't know if you said this, I was queuing up the next comment. If I'm Green Bay, I'd rather move up in the draft some and get my offensive tackle of the future than big contract and a premium pick for Garrett Bowles. I'd rather go with the draft pick on this one. But so I don't expect that to happen. Certainly appreciate it. I think it would be cheap one way or the other if Garrett Bowles is moved. You save a bunch of cash or you get a lower pick. One or the other. Both could be valuable though. Both could be valuable here. To finish out the Kyper and Field Yates' pick. Field Yates was on the clock at 78 or 76 with the Broncos. He takes Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler was available at 76, and he says Denver's patience at quarterback pays off here. Rattler could certainly compete with Jarrett Stidham for the starting quarterback job right away. I agree. Now, would you rather have Rattler and Bowers, or let's see who else was available? Again, it's always mock drafts are always about, who could be available in that area more so than what pick is that. I'm trying to predict the actual pick. Quinyon Mitchell goes 13. Cornerback. Offensive tackle goes 14. Terrion Arnold goes 15. Cornerback. Defensive lineman Byron Murphy. Wide receiver Brian Thomas. Those guys are all available in the next 5 picks. So would you rather have Spencer Rattler and Brock Bowers? Or would you rather have Bo Nix? And then let's see, again, let's go down to 77 here. And Jonah Ellis, edge out of Utah, not bad. Javon Baker, or again, those are the kind of things you ask. There's your offensive tackle. I love Dominic Pooney out of Kansas.
Yeah.
Is a good pick. So those are the kind of things you have. And, when I put it that way, I'm like, okay, well, it's debatable. It is. It is absolutely debatable because there's going to be some good players available in the 70s as well.
Yeah, for me, Rattler, it purely comes down to things that I can't answer. How is he wired? We all saw him on the TV show when he was in high school. Heard reports about him as a true freshman at Oklahoma. Things that should give you pause, but it's not for us to decide. Is he a personality match for Sean Payton and the Broncos? I mean, a lot of these scouts, the road scouts especially, Scott, their job is as much private investigator of the personality and the background of these guys as it is evaluating the tape. I mean, they're going to have the tape and everything for the higher ups to look at eventually anyways. It's what is the background of these players. And that's one that I won't pretend to have insight on other than what we've seen before. And there's questions there. It's one reason that Jim Nagy said many times the player that everybody wants to meet down here at the Senior Bowl, it's not Bo Nix, it's not Michael Penix, it's Spencer Rattler, because of the background, the personality stuff.
Combined with the talent, he's worth checking out.
Yes,
because he's got a really good arm.
And his mechanics are pretty flawless. If I could copy paste his mechanics over to Drake May, we'd be really cooking with gas. But not a big guy, not a great athlete. I mean, is it crazy to say, Scott, I kind of came out and I watched all your clips and everything and paid attention to the Senior Bowl. Out of just the Senior Bowl reps, I think Rattler was my favorite quarterback.
I'm telling you, Joe Milton had a good Senior Bowl.
He did too. It's just the misses are he's pretty, looks stiff sometimes. I don't know. It just looks clunky.
6'5", 4'5", 245 pounds, stiff is okay.
Explosive, but I don't think it's the fluidity.
I know.
That you're looking
for. As
far
as like the eye poppingness of that type of setting,
yeah,
Joe Milton looked pretty damn good. The one that I was completely out on was Michael Pratt. Yeah, I just did not see enough arm to play in the NFL on a consistent basis.
But watching them, I thought Penix had a bad first day where he was forcing the ball, and then day 2 and day 3 he was the best. Now some of that is, there's some odd reps and settings for like Bo Nix in the Senior Bowl. We kind of talked about that, not really perfect for evaluating them. But as far as Rattler at 76, it's going to come down to the personality stuff. He'd been interviewed by Kay Adams talking about which team pressed you the hardest. It was the Broncos. They really gave him a lot of...
you had my attention at Kay Adams.
God, me too.
I'm listening. What?
Yes, no, she's great. Really good reporter. Does good NFL stuff. But yes, she's both Michael Penix and Spencer Rattler have talked about just how difficult the Broncos interview was being approached and having to go into it with the terminology and the playbook stuff with Sean Payton. So they're definitely putting in the work there and putting these guys through the ringer. So Rattler at 76, if he's on their board and they are okay with the personality stuff in the background, believe he's changed and grown, then I'm certainly about it. I mean, one thing I will say about Rattler is that watching him this season, there was no quarterback out of the top 100 viable candidates this year that was in a worse situation than Spencer Rattler. He was pressured on 40% of his dropbacks, Scott, which is just asinine. I think Bo Nix might have been like 12% or something. South Carolina ran 10 different combinations of offensive linemen this season. And outside of Xavier Legette, none of their wide receivers are doing diddly squat at the NFL level. They have like a super prospect that came in there, but he's pure athlete right now. He's not a wide receiver at all.
That's Nicholas Harbor.
Yeah.
He should be an edge. It kills me that he's playing wide receiver. It's 240 pounds in high school, running a 10-200 meters or something. He's insane.
He should be an edge rusher. You're 100%.
What has he become? I don't know. But as far as athleticism, that was, Adafa Owe type of athlete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a freak playing wide receiver. But
let's get to Keith here real quick because we're about out of time. He says, Nick and Scott, could you rank the teams we could make a move with and potentially trade up in the draft? I think the team in the best position to move, well, the Chargers, but would they make a move with you? And then you get say 6, depending on what happens ahead of them. The Giants could be open for business. And then the Falcons at 8 are in a prime position to move back a few spots. When I look at the Falcons, I look at 11, 12, and 13. I would love to be in that spot and to get a second-round pick. The problem is I don't think 11, 12, or 13 have a second round pick. It's not just the Broncos.
No.
It's all of them. I'm like, well, what am I
Saints
trading down with you for then? You're going to have to come up with a little extra then.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, the future picks are always going to be viable, and especially we'll see how teams view the future quarterback class. Maybe those 2025 ones are more teams are a little bit more willing to move on from them, given what the top of the class next year looks like. Better defensively, but not incredible offensively at the premium.
The Raiders
spots.
have a second round pick. Was it the Jets at 10? It's the Jets. It's 10, 11, and 12. None of them have a second round pick, 10, 11, or 12. The Raiders do have a second round pick at 44.
And the Saints have the Broncos' third round pick, or one of their thirds for the or second round pick, excuse me, for the Sean Payton trade. Rattlesnake Master says, in late, but want to show some love from Nebraska. The bell's about to toll. I anticipate 50% of the people are going to bitch and moan no matter what we do. I'm just excited for the new faces. Cheers, guys. If we're talking betting odds here, Scott, over and under, probably, I mean, over 50% are going to bitch in some way, but that's, it's that's the draft, and it's a lot of fun to piss and moan about stuff that doesn't really matter.
That will be the initial reaction, Rattlesnake Massacre, and then more than half of that 50% that is on the negative side will come around. They will talk themselves into that this is the right guy, that they got who they wanted. I'm good with it. Sean Payton's great. If he wants him, I want him type of things, despite the fact that there were 11 other picks before you if you pick at 12. Then Sean got his guy. Okay, well, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But everybody will come around. There will be the initial teeth gnashing, and then people will come around because they want what's best for the Denver Broncos.
Yeah. Yep. A week after, every single pick is going to be the best value it could have been, right? We'll contort ourselves that way, but it's a lot of fun. We'll see what happens with the draft, guys. We're going to get on out of here. Appreciate everyone coming in here with the super chats. We had Oblivion Empire, Michael Ronquillo, Chris Hissel, Michael Ronquillo again, Gary Palmer, Coach Chris, Keith Brugman, Troy Boer, just supporting the guys. I don't know if we showed that one before. Shout out to Troy Boer. Good to see you. Coach Chris again, Keith Brugman again, and Rattlesnake Master. You guys are keeping the lights on for us. It's always a lot of fun to hang out with you guys. And as Jeremy says, it's either Sean we trust or Sean sucks, no in between.
All the conversations online are binary, and it's silly. It's always in between, yet the conversations are never in between. I don't get it.
I do.
I really don't. It's always somewhere in the middle, leaning one way or the other, and none of the conversations are.
It's easier for the mind to put people in buckets and categories when things are really on a spectrum, right? It's the simplicity of the human mind and trying to organize entropy in the universe.
Right.
And
that's always one, when we're talking about why did this go wrong, it's always one fault, and the less people involved, the better. Oh, well, we've got a problem here. Ooh, that's bad. That's too much to fix. It's the coach. It's the owner. It's the quarterback. It's the left tackle.
Yeah.
There's always
and that's another reason. It's I think it's a little hope, right? If we just fix this
so
one variable.
I only have to fix one thing, and we're good. We're just a quarterback away.
Maybe you are for an instant, but then it changes. Yeah. So appreciate everyone coming in here. Make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott's at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Also follow us at Mile High Huddle if you haven't done so yet. Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. And as the ticker says here underneath, please subscribe to Mile High Huddle, share on your social media platforms, and like the show on the way out. If you guys have any questions for us, hit us up on Twitter. We're going to be back again live Wednesday this week.
You didn't do Thursday. A mock draft.
We didn't do a mock draft. We'll have to do a mock draft Monday for Wednesdays. But that's okay. We had enough to talk about today anyway, and we'll definitely have a chance on Wednesday as well, unless there's some breaking news. But kind of, it feels like the calm before the storm right now.
I just have to change the description that we break down Field Yates and Mel Kiper's mock draft.
There we go.
Sorry for the tease. And we will be back on Wednesday, not Thursday. So remember, make sure you're liking and make sure you're subscribing, liking on Facebook, subscribing on YouTube, so you get those notifications when we change things up a little bit, because we are going to go Monday and Wednesday for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely. So, all right, guys. Well, we appreciate you. We'll see you later. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. And as always, go Broncos.